I lived in East Jerusalem, in Palestinian East Jerusalem between 2016 and 2020. I've written many books about the conflict, I've done films about the conflict, and I guess a main feeling I've had for years, not just because of my own background, but because of what I've seen on the ground, is one of outrage, shame, embarrassment, culpability, responsibility. Now, I'm not personally responsible for what's happening in Palestine. I'm not an Israeli soldier. I would never become one. But it's important to understand that I think if a country claims to speak in my name, and Israel claims to speak for all Jews as a Jewish state, then we have responsibility, in my view, as Jews to speak out against it if we're against what is happening on the ground. I do not know Shireen personally. I never met her. But I've known, and I do know, many Palestinian and good Israeli journalists who work over there in very, very difficult circumstances. It's been said a few times tonight, but it's worth repeating that in the last 20 years, at least 20 journalists have been killed by Israel. There's been no accountability, no justice for any of those Palestinian families. And it's becoming much more dangerous, in fact, to be a Palestinian journalist than ever before because of that sense of impunity. What everyone has spoken about here tonight. There is no accountability. Not just for killing journalists, but for killing any Palestinians. We've just seen this week. Someone said at least 25 Palestinians killed, many women, many children, have nothing to do with any conflict. There's no accountability for those people. And again, I think it's important that we speak out clearly, not just to put pressure on Israel, but to put pressure on our own government, the Australian government, whether it's Labor or Liberal, it's now Labor, to say more than just put out a press release. If they even do that, there needs to be much more than that. Palestine should be recognised, and I hope that happens this term, next term, some term, soon. But it has to be much more than that. Now, journalists, as I said a minute ago, face a lot of pressure and threat in Palestine. Particularly Palestinians, of course, but also Israelis. The good Israeli journalists, of which there are a handful, not enough. When I myself was there in 2016, I was interviewing or asked a question of a prominent Israeli politician, a legitimate question. By the end of the day, I was threatened with expulsion. I'm not comparing myself to a Palestinian by any means, but I'm simply saying the environment that exists there is not of a democracy. When we hear our politicians regularly say, the only democracy in the Middle East, it is a lie. It is not. It's not a democracy unless you are Jewish. That's not a democracy. Now, one thing that has struck me over many, many years, spending time in Palestine, working there amongst other places in the world, but particularly in Palestine, is that the journalists that are operating there, like Shireen and others, risk their lives to report and tell us what is happening. And what's changed in the last 10 years, which to me is a minor sign of encouragement, public opinion in many Western countries is shifting on this question, including here. And that's not by accident. It's happening because, to me, social media is a key factor in this. You can see Palestinians in their own voice, in their own images on TikTok, Facebook, whatever the platform might be. The pictures don't lie. The voices don't lie. You see what is happening on the ground in East Jerusalem, in Palestine, in Gaza, wherever it may be. People see that. They're angry about it. They want their governments to act on it far more than they do now. I think Izzat said it a minute ago, but it's worth repeating that the Committee to Protect Journalists, the key journalistic organisation in the US, put out a report just this week on the anniversary of Shireen's murder that said that 20 journalists have been killed in the last year, or the number may be more, Palestinians. And there's been no accountability for any of them. Zero. No serious investigation. No accountability. Nothing. And how does that change? That changes with pressure on Israel. That happens, in my view, with sanctions, with boycotts, with divestment. That's the only way this will change. A state doesn't change its behaviour just because it thinks it's wrong. A, it doesn't think it's wrong, and B, it needs to have accountability. The only way to me is those three factors. And I think it's also important that there is a growing voice of Jews around the world to speak out against Israel, critical of Israel, saying that Israel does not speak in our name as Jews. It does not speak in our name. And without Jewish diaspora support, Israel does not exist. US backing is key, of course, but Jewish diaspora support is vital. The US particularly, but also here. And it is clear in many Western countries, the US and Australia, there is a shift. Maybe people in this room don't hear about this, but there is a shift in the Jewish community. I'm not celebrating that by any means in Australia, but there is a shift. In America, the Jewish community is at war with itself about this question. There is a growing civil war, a peaceful civil war, within the Jewish community about what is happening. Many young Jews speak out, they're critical, they call Israel an apartheid state, they put pressure on their politicians for accountability. Now you could say, is that impacting Joe Biden? Not yet. It might not impact Joe Biden, but it might impact the next president. And my point is that the Jewish community has a role here to be critical. The Palestinian Arab community obviously has a major role as well. But I can speak as someone who is Jewish and just say, without justice for people like Shireen, there is no justice for anyone else. Thank you very much for asking.
Thank you, Anthony. He is the voice of truth and justice, isn't he? So we thank you for that. Our fourth speaker was born in Kuwait to Palestinian parents from the villages of Shufi near Tulkarem and village of Farka near Nablus. She is the principal lawyer and director at Australian Centre for International Justice. Prior to founding this organization, Rawan worked as a refugee lawyer at a Sydney-based community legal centre, providing a wide range of protection advice to people seeking asylum in Australia. She has also worked with Adalah in Haifa, a legal center protecting the rights of Palestinians, both citizens of Israel and those living under the occupation. Please join me in welcoming our human rights defender and refugee advocate, Rawan Arab.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much. Good evening. Thank you so much, Palestinian Christians in Australia and the community here today. Louder?
Yes,
Maybe I hold Thanks so much for your patience, everybody. I'd like to acknowledge the Wandjung people of the Darug Nation, the lands on which we are standing on today, and acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. This land will always be Aboriginal land. This is a statement to the media 1 year after the assassination of Shireen. If you ask me, how are you? I will tell you that I feel angry. Angry because Shireen and I both died that day under that tree. She is waiting for justice from the heavens, and I'm waiting for justice here on earth. Inside me is disappointment, anger, and oppression, which grows and increases after every crime committed against the Palestinian people. This statement is from Shada Hanesha, the young Palestinian female journalist who found herself a witness to a war crime, a survivor of that crime, that early morning in the heroic refugee camp of Jenin, a crime against her mentor and her hero, Shireen. I'm honoured to be speaking in the memory of Shireen Akleh. Shireen had a voice that I, along with millions of Palestinians and Arabs, grew to know and love. She brought to us the stories of the Second Intifada. She brought to us the stories of Jenin, of Nablus, Ramallah, Quds, and everywhere across Palestine, a crime scene of 75 years. In Palestine this year we mark 75 years of Nakba, 75 years of dispossession and forced exile, 75 years of settler colonial apartheid policies, 56 years of an illegal belligerent Israeli military occupation, of aggression and annexation, and there is no end in sight. In fact, these policies are now entrenched with the backing and support of Western governments. Shireen brought to us the sadness, the brutality, but also the bravery, the steadfastness and the resistance of the Palestinian people. She brought to us the people and they welcomed her into their hearts, their homes, and towns across Palestine. I was heavily pregnant when the news of her killing broke. I couldn't believe it. I cried out in shock. Oh my God, they've killed Shireen. I was alone at home. I wondered if my baby in utero heard my cries. He was already in tune to the dead Quran crimes of his people. I cried as I watched the eyewitness videos coming in, still in shock. Shireen was murdered in cold blood by the Israeli regime's occupation forces. In the coming hours, days and months since her murder, we were subjected to the denials, the attempts by the perpetrators of the crime to deceive and control the narrative through obfuscation, fabrication of lies and gaslighting. Then came the barbarity at her funeral, where mourners and the pallbearers holding her casket were brutally attacked with batons and tear gas. Again, in broad daylight, Israel's savagery was on full display. That savagery was contrasted by the hearts and souls of Palestinians who took over Jerusalem to mourn and put to rest one of their beloved daughters. As we are marking her murder, the besieged and illegally blockaded Gaza is under threat of more bombs from the sky, where children and entire families have been killed. In the West Bank, where young men and children are being shot deliberately in gunshot wounds to the heart, head and chests. And homes and schools are destroyed. In 48 Palestine, where Palestinians are being lynched by emboldened settlers, and settler colonial apartheid policies are entrenched. And all of the above and more is done with impunity. Shireen was targeted. She was killed in broad daylight. She was killed because she shone a light and gave a voice to the injustices in Palestine. That she was an American citizen, a Christian, a journalist with a protective vest and a helmet. None of this shielded her from Israel's crimes. She was killed because she was Palestinian. Despite the overwhelming evidence, no one has been held accountable for her murder. Israeli authorities have failed to hold perpetrators accountable, and it would be foolish to think that they could. They conduct sham investigations as a veneer to shield their soldiers and their civilian and military leaders from accountability globally. Independent investigations and conclusions from the UN, international human rights organizations, investigative journalists, and international media agencies, including Al Jazeera, CNN, the New York Times, and the Washington Post, all put beyond doubt that Israeli forces deliberately targeted and shot Shireen and her journalist colleagues. UN Special Rapporteur Francesca Albanese has said that despite all this, justice remains again a hostage of politics. This epitomizes the widespread impunity that Israel enjoys in Palestine. The apartheid regime considers that an apology delivered on CNN yesterday from one of the leaders of the forces that shot her dead would satisfy the desire for justice. It is an insult to all of us. The US government, though has opened an investigation into her murder, for months and months sought to impose the Israeli version of events into her death. It seems that everyone else can access justice, but not the Palestinians. We have to endure empty statements in perpetuity about negotiated peace, while our oppressors kill and maim our people and carve up every bit of our land. It's been said here tonight that Palestine is a dangerous place for journalists. In the last 22 years, it is said that at least 22 journalists have been killed and thousands targeted and injured by Israel's occupation forces. And efforts to hold perpetrators of these war crimes and crimes against humanity have never transpired. Again, justice remains hostage of politics. Let's look at one of the available avenues for justice, the International Criminal Court, and our own government's double standards in the pursuit of international justice and accountability. Palestine's history with the ICC is a long and fraught one, beginning in 2009, following the devastating war on Gaza. The tribulations which followed this initial engagement is too long to consider this evening, but it manifests into Palestine seeking statehood and eventually becoming a member of the ICC. In December 2019, after a 5-year-long preliminary examination, the former prosecutor announced that her office, the Office of the Prosecutor, was opening an investigation into the situation in Palestine. But prior to initiating an investigation, the office sought a ruling or a confirmation from the pretrial chamber on the scope of the court's territorial jurisdiction, which the Office of the Prosecutor stated comprises the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem and the Gaza Strip. The pretrial chamber sought input from victims and their representatives, member states, and third parties to provide observations to the court. At the request of the State of Israel, and we know that from Hansard records in federal parliament, Australia indicated that it would intervene in support of Israel's attempt to block an investigation in Palestine. Only a week prior to this indication from Australia, in a statement that Australia provided at an annual Assembly of States Parties to the ICC, it stated that, and I quote, "History has demonstrated time and again that without accountability there can be no lasting peace and a sustainable peace. Victims are calling consistently for justice as an essential component of viable political outcomes and reconciliation." But when it came to light that Australia was going to intervene in the ICC proceedings and argue to block the ICC from exercising its jurisdiction in Palestine, this was the statement that DFAT provided the following day. "We consider that the question of territory and borders can be resolved only through direct negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians. This is the only way to ensure a durable and resilient peace." So what Australia is saying here, and consistently on Palestine, is that Palestinians don't deserve access to justice. They must negotiate with their occupiers and the perpetrators of their crimes only. Australia's objection, along with that of other states who supported this position, was eventually rejected by the pretrial chamber of the court, and there is now an open investigation in Palestine at the ICC. I pause to list the allegations of serious crimes being investigated by the ICC's Office of the Prosecutor. They include Israel's economic blockade of the Gaza Strip, which Israel has imposed since 2007 and is fortified by land, air and sea. This illegal siege of Gaza has had a devastating humanitarian impact on the people there. Israel's conduct of the war in Gaza in the summer of 2014, which killed over 2,100 people and injured tens of thousands, destroyed property and vital civilian infrastructure, as Israel's prerogative is in every air war on Gaza since 2009. And there will no doubt be an investigation into Israel's massive assault on Gaza in 2021 and what's happening today. Israeli colonial settlement enterprise in the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem, which has a severely destructive impact on the livelihood and basic fundamental freedoms of Palestinians there, and includes land confiscation, settler violence, the confiscation of natural resources, home demolitions, forced evictions and displacement. The settlement enterprise causes economic deprivation and extreme poverty. It impacts on the Palestinians' freedom of movement as a result of bypass roads, checkpoints and gates. It produces food and water insecurity because of the denial of access to farmlands, for example. The illegal annexation law severs landowners from their farmlands and crops and separates communities and families from one another. And so on. The harmful impacts of these illegal colonies are endless. The OTP is also considering the lethal shooting of the Israeli military, of Palestinian demonstrators at the Gaza frontier in 2018-19, was known as the Great March of Return, demanding an end to the blockade and a right of return for Palestinian refugees. These protests resulted in the killing of 300 people by live ammunition, by IDF snipers, 46 of them children, and it also caused a devastating 36,100 injuries, where many people lost limbs deliberately. The crime against humanity of apartheid would also no doubt be under investigation by the Office of the Prosecutor. It would also include the killing of Shireen and other journalists deliberately targeted by Israel's occupation forces. But as yet, 2 years into the new prosecutor's term, he has yet to move the Palestine investigation forward. In fact, as I stated this morning, he avoids it like the plague. The question remains, is the new prosecutor, Karim Khan, also a hostage of politics? Palestinian lawyer in Gaza, Shireen, says that it's the ICC that needs Palestine. The ICC needs Palestine to ensure it's an institution that should be taken seriously and credibly. Shireen was brave. She possessed courage. Her courage and bravery stands in contrast to the deficient and increasing absence of any bravery or courage in newsrooms of mainstream media across the world, as journalists and editors cower to pressure from the Israeli lobby. It stands in contrast to the absence of courage in our politics. And I'll reiterate a point from Shireen as I leave you today. I choose journalism to be close to people. It might not be easy to change the reality, but at least I can bring their voices to the world. I am Shireen Abati.
How fortunate are we to have 4 amazing speakers? Can you please give upload to Dr. Azad Abdelhadi, Linda Boltz, Anthony Lewenstein, and Aman Allah. Before we finish today, I would like to play the recording. We asked Tony Abu Akleh, Shireen's brother, to send us a message, and we received a message from him. So we would like to play what he had to say.
Thank you for holding 1 year memorial for our beloved Shireen. This means a lot to the family. Also in maintaining her legacy, which is what we have been trying to do. Shireen, a Palestinian Christian who dedicated her life and her career reporting on the suffering of Palestinian people who are under the Israeli occupation. She covered every aspect you can think of for a period of 25 years. What we can do is pursue justice for Shireen in every legal channel. Those responsible to justice and hold them accountable. Shireen was in full gear when she was yet wearing her armored jacket, marked with crest, and her helmet didn't save her from the Israeli bullets. And on the second day, her funeral was also attacked savagely by the Israeli police. We are glad that the FBI opened an investigation into her killing, and we hope the outcome will be credible based on facts and eyewitnesses and live video coverage from the incident. Like other investigative reports released by media outlets and human rights organizations, the family wants stronger pressure to be exercised on Israel to end the impunity and the double standards to avoid this from happening to any other journalist in the world. This can be only achieved by strong stands made by the international community, especially those who with close ties with Israel, who failed even to investigate this incident. Thank you again. Thank you very much.
Shireen is still alive. She's alive in our hearts and in our minds. And she gave us a gift that no matter how bad the situation is, one can still make an impact. Not doing anything in the face of impossible circumstances is not an option. I urge each one of you to ask yourself, What can I do? What gifts do I have? What difference can I make? Each one of us, like Shireen, can dedicate their time for this cause. Get involved, because that's what Shireen would do. It might not be easy to change the reality, but at least you could bring your voice to the world. On behalf of the various Palestinian organizations that have helped make this memorial a reality, I thank you all for coming and for being with us tonight. It's been a pleasure having you here with us. Please stay for another half an hour. We've still got lots of cookies, my mom's yansun and laid biscuits, and there's lots of coffee as well. So connect, enjoy, talk to people, and we hope to see